What is good, everyone? Welcome to my channel. A little bit of an unorthodox episode because we have a typhoon coming. I can't get out and do my normal taping while I walk around the town, so doing a driving episode instead. This week's topic is, does living in Japan move your politics to the left or to the right? Let's get after it. First of all, I want to thank you for tuning into my channel. If you end up liking this video, please remember to hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And let's get going. So, does Japan move someone's politics to the left or the right just by virtue of living here? Well, that's debatable, but I'm going to bring up some points that I think are important for understanding how your politics might change if you live in Japan. The first is, you're going to be surrounded by people who are coming from completely different political backgrounds than you. So what you think of as your left and right, your conservative, your liberal, are going to be different than what other people think. And so, for example, as an American, if I were to say something about the liberal media bias, or the American media is very left, if I'm talking to someone from Germany or Denmark or France or something, they're going to laugh at me. And they're, the left, the Democrat Party in America is kind of center-right where they come from. So you're going to get these different definitions from people on what they consider left and right. And, it makes it for some interesting conversations, to be sure. Now, another thing that you have to realize is that, as with anywhere, the people who you end up working with or surrounding yourself by are probably going to have some effect on your politics as well. So if you come from a small town in the States, you might have more conservatives around you. And if you're from a big city, or if you're from Portland, Oregon, for example, you might have more progressive liberal types around you. And that will sway you one way or the other, or at least you will hear those particular arguments, talking points, viewpoints more often. Now in Japan, to be honest, I'm working in a university, so a lot of my colleagues and a lot of people that I work with are more to the left, are more to the progressive side of the aisle, and that makes sense. It's pretty common for academia the world over. Now, whether or not that's moved me or not, well, I'm going to keep that secret for the moment, because there's another main point that I would like to make before I get into my own personal politics and whether Japan has actually changed me or not. And that is, when you live in Japan, you definitely live in a bubble. If you think you're living in a social media bubble now and you're only getting content and talk and viewpoints that sort of agree with you, like Facebook and Google has curated everything, that you're only getting things that echo your own viewpoint, well, Japan might elevate that even more, because when you're here, you are divorced from the day-to-day existence that you have in the country that you're coming from originally, your home country, so to speak. So when you're here, you don't get the day-to-day. You don't get the day-to-day conversations. You don't have really a finger on the pulse of what people are really thinking, what people are really into. And as a result, you end up even more in a political bubble. And I can illustrate this with my own personal example. Illustrating this with an example from my own life, I lived here from 2002 to 2005 originally, and during that time we had the 2004 election between John Kerry and George W. Bush. And the people around me were big fans of Kerry. They were Democrats, and so as a result, they were consuming particular media. Back then it was message boards on the internet. Facebook wasn't really a thing yet. And basically everyone around me was convinced there was no way George W. Bush was going to be reelected. Given their war in Iraq and everything else that was going on, John Kerry was absolutely going to win. And they were completely shocked, flabbergasted when that didn't happen. I've seen this exact same situation happen twice again. In 2016 with Bernie Sanders, and in 2020, right now, again with Bernie Sanders. So, like I said before, I have a lot of colleagues who are progressive types. They're convinced that it has to be Bernie Sanders. It was gonna be Bernie Sanders who is the nominee, that he's the best person to go up against Trump. If not him, it's gotta be like Elizabeth Warren. So, yeah, Bernie Sanders, without a doubt. Did that happen? Yeah, clearly not. Not in either case. So, you end up in a greater echo chamber by being abroad, because you have, you know, maybe a smaller slice of actual foreigners that you associate with, so you're only getting their views, and you only have the media that you can get on Facebook or by Googling it or whatever as your representation of what is actually happening politically back in the States. You're just too divorced from the situation to really understand what's going on. All right, the moment you've been waiting for. Hit like and subscribe if you want me to reveal my political views. Okay? All right, let's go. Has Japan moved me to the left or to the right? Now, personally, I am not a politics as a team sport type of person. I believe there's good policies on both sides of the aisle. Generally speaking, I look at the different policies and ask myself, how should the government be involved in this, if they should be involved in this, and to what extent should they be involved in this? So, before I came to Japan, I was already a raging lefty progressive socialist when it came to education. I'm a huge proponent of public education. If we have any shot of getting people out of poverty and into better life styles, of better livelihoods, we gotta have people getting a fair shot at good education. When it came to things like medical system, well, I'm more skeptical of the government running a full-on medical scheme, even after living in Japan, because generally speaking, I think one of the big problems is the cost of medical care, not whether people have insurance for it or not. This is mostly demonstrated by a number of examples that I've experienced myself, but I think the one that lays it out easiest was a friend who was pregnant and was on prenatal vitamins. After having the baby, the doctor recommended she stay on the vitamins while breastfeeding, and she went to the pharmacy and they would give her the ones that she'd been getting covered by insurance for $120. Or she could have the over-the-counter ones, which were the exact same thing, for $15. And so to me, that doesn't sound like a problem of needing insurance. That sounds more of a problem that you need insurance to actually pay for anything. So unless a real, you know, the medical system in America is completely effed up. There's no doubt about that. But it's not just about giving everyone insurance. We got to do something about cost too. So where has Japan moved me, left or right? Well, I think the most obvious place I've moved left is likely on immigration, because as an immigrant myself, I've witnessed firsthand how officialdom can really be against you and how hard it can be to be an immigrant. Now, and no, I'm not saying my experience is anything like people who have moved to the States from really horrible situations in South or Central America, fleeing from cartels or whatever else. So I can't speak to that, obviously, but I'm certainly more sympathetic and believe that everyone should really get a fair shot at going to the country of their choice and being accepted there and somehow being able to become a part of that society. So where have I perhaps moved a little bit to the right? Well, I've definitely seen where government regulation can cause a lot of problems. I'm talking about in terms of the regulation of automobiles, for emissions, for safety, ends up costing consumers a lot of money. And before Trump, who is pro tariffs and sort of trade protectionism, that was never a Republican or a sort of conservative ideal. It was all about free trade, opening things up, and allowing for competition, and those are things that I generally think are a good thing. You know, more trade is better. Protectionism makes certain things cost more than they should and limits the kind of products and services you can possibly consume. Japan is a great nation for protectionism of its industries, and so things that you really want to get in Japan can be dreadfully expensive, impossible to find, or just, you know, you end up paying a tariff on it for ordering it from abroad. And yeah, that's the sort of thing that has made me feel much more in favor of free trade, and it irritates me that Japan blocks things that, you know, why can't it be available to people? Why is it so bad that people have access to a Korean product or an American product just because Japan makes the same thing? Right, okay. Protecting jobs, I know it's a balancing act, but at the same time, too much protectionism is not good, so I definitely have moved farther to the right when it comes to that economic question. As for everything else, I have to say that Japan is a great place to have your ideas challenged. You're going to have your beliefs stress test in a way that you wouldn't otherwise if you just stayed in the States or wherever it is you're from, because you're going to meet so many different people, you're going to have interesting conversations. So in a way, I've become more left or more right on certain things simply because my arguments have been honed and strengthened by talking with people about them. So for example, a conservative viewpoint, I listen to progressive friends, and rather than be convinced by them, I realize that the arguments I'm making are pretty tight, and so it solidifies my view a little bit more. Same with some more left views I've had. I'm not a big left-right person. I'm more like, let's look at each policy and the merits and demerits of having the government too heavily involved in it and go off of that. So because I'm that independent, probably Japan wasn't going to change me all that much. I know that's probably a disappointing answer, but it is an honest one. So I want to thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you've made it this far and you haven't done that yet. Do it. Hit the like, hit the red subscribe button, hit the bell. Watch my content every single Friday, and I want to thank you very much for this special Typhoon edition watching you did. I will see you next week.